All right, good morning, everyone. So as mentioned, my name's Matt. I'm the co-founder of Bungalow Capital, and prior to Bungalow, I spent 2 decades in procurement, actually. You don't have to trust me. I brought my hairline out today as proof. But ultimately, look, I'm here because I love procurement, and I genuinely am excited for the future of the operating model. I think procurement can do amazing things for an organization. I think it can propel it forward. But I think it's absolutely critical that given where we're at today, that the operating model has to evolve to match the pace of innovation. I mean, here's the good news is I think that procurement has been around long enough, and we've managed to navigate some shifts already. We managed the shift to SaaS. We've managed to shift to mobile, and we're still standing, and we just recently kind of all shifted to the cloud over the last decade or so. And the operating model that we've had has largely worked. We've largely been able to navigate these shifts. But I feel personally that the shift to AI is happening quicker than any of the previous shifts, and I feel like the impact of AI will be felt much more dramatically than any of these kind of previous cycles. And this is the real rub with the operating model, right? As the world has kind of gotten scarier and more complex, the procurement operating model did what it was trained to do. It slowed way down. It hunkered down, it slowed down, it managed the organization's risk. And this is all for the good of the organization. It added structure, it added sign-offs, and we're kind of facing a challenge now because the world is speeding up. It's speeding up rapidly. So suddenly we find ourselves in this era where just a 3-person AI team can build an enterprise-ready procurement product in a month, right? We're entering this era where employees who now are used to tinkering with AI workflows and bots in their personal life are going to be asking to bring their bots to work. I'm old enough to remember when people brought their phones to work, and this was like a big problem for us, and now people are bringing bots. Like, this is a code red situation. But to be clear, what's in front of us is not small at all. This is not a small shift. This is a whole new operating environment. And if the model doesn't evolve with it, procurement won't just slow the business down, it will become irrelevant to it. So I suspect there's like a host of internal conversations to be had around how companies let AI bots, touch their data, how they're provisioned, and these conversations all should be had. They should be had within your organization because it really depends on the culture of your operating model and your company for how this comes into play. But the traditional model of category-driven, cost-focused, governance-first, I would argue has been built for a world where change was slow and solutions were interchangeable, and the risk primarily came from overspending. Today's environment, this is completely different. I would argue that the biggest risk today in your organization will come from inaction. If we're still here next year talking about how you're going to start to use AI in your department, I fear this will be a big problem for your organization. And I think for me, what's critical to understand is that AI is not just another class of vendor. This is a whole new mode of value creation. And if we're relying on old models, I'm deeply, deeply concerned that we will all miss the companies and workflows that define 2030. So I mentioned earlier, I believe procurement's suited well for this shift. Procurement's the only team in the enterprise that touches every function. It understands every contract, it evaluates every tool, and it genuinely has a panoramic view of how the organization operates and makes decisions. So procurement's uniquely qualified to lead the organization through these changes, but I do not think it will happen by clinging to the old playbook. It won't get there by managing SaaS seats or driving to 10% cost savings when the business is asking for copilots and productivity multipliers. It gets there by evolving. It gets there by evolving the coverage model, it gets there by evolving the metrics, and it gets there by improving the pace and speed to action. I think this is the most important part. The speed is going to kill as AI proliferates the organization, and it's incumbent on us to keep up with that pace. So today I want to walk you through 3 critical shifts I believe define the future operating model of procurement. So 1, how procurement goes from category managers to business accelerators. Category management has served us incredibly well, but today's environment calls for a new path forward. The second is I want to talk about how the model needs to upgrade the way it measures value in the world of AI, because the opportunity that we're looking at today is much, much bigger than savings. And finally, I want to talk about how to replace the 12 to 18-month sourcing cycle with a one-month contract model that actually matches the pace of innovation. The big concern here now is that we're operating on a model that's far slower than the roadmaps of the suppliers we're working with. And anytime there's that kind of disconnect, there can be a big problem. So again, I do not think that the future model is about compliance or cost savings. The future model of procurement is about building and sustaining a competitive advantage. So let's start with the coverage model. Category management has been the backbone of procurement for decades. It brought logic to spend, it gave us control, it made sourcing scalable, it made a lot of us look really good in front of finance. But this world is going away, and I would argue that category management was built for commoditized markets. And AI is just not a commodity. AI native solutions, you have to understand, are fluid, and they kind of move throughout the organization. They don't follow category rules. And they're popping up in areas of the org chart that we weren't built to handle on the traditional category model. I think there's a possibility that continuing to operate under the category model will keep information siloed in the organization and keep us from realizing the best opportunities. But I also feel like there's a tug of war around categories too, of who owns what. And the world is simply moving too fast to sit and try to sort out what category a technology falls into when we should be supporting the business. So instead of owning categories, I would propose that procurement should start owning workflows. The core processes that drive business performance, so customer onboarding, contract execution, product development, employee enablement. Categories were about inputs. Workflows are about outputs. So let's make this a little bit more concrete. Say legal finds this startup that uses AI to review third-party contracts. It flags issues before they ever hit external counsel. The tool reduces turnaround time and cuts legal costs in half. Under the category model, there's actually some questions: who owns this? Is this legal tech? Is this software? Is this service? And the result here is, in my experience at least, confusion, delay, and ultimately death by steering committee. But under the workflow model, this is a lot simpler. This is contract lifecycle optimization. It's clear that the job of that person is to evaluate and improve any contract that comes in the org and the process. The intake's clear, the decision path is short, the impact is immediate. So let's look at another one. The CRO brings in an AI tool that listens to sales calls in real time, and it coach reps live. It improves the close rates. In the old model, I think, there's questions. Is this HR tech? Is this sales enablement? Who owns the actual vendor? In the workflow model, this is revenue enablement. And so you test it, and you get it rolled out into the org. And this changes everything. You get faster discovery, stronger alignment, and a procurement team that acts more like a growth team. You become embedded in the business, closer to the goals, closer to the problems, and more importantly, closer to the opportunity. I think this impacts hiring as well. In the past, we've looked for folks that can bring negotiation skills. But I don't think we're looking for that anymore. I don't think we're just looking for contract experts or people with 10 years negotiation skills. I would argue that in this model, we're looking for analysts, we're looking for builders, we're looking for workflow thinkers who can sit down with the organization or product team or CFO and ask, what's slowing you down? And how can we fix it? So I think this is the future of procurement. It's a function that stops asking, what can I buy? And starts asking, what are we trying to achieve? And how do we achieve it? So I'll share a firsthand example here. The first category I ever managed was fleet for a pharma company, and it was exciting, right? Cars are expensive. Buying a couple thousand of them, could surely save the company money, even with my negotiation skills. And it took me a year to kind of source this batch of cars, another quarter or two to put out the RFP for a fleet management company and to get through red lines and contracting. And with time passed in my career and in today's exciting environment where we're starting to question the old model and look to the future, I've asked myself what exactly I was buying for the organization. So in the old model, I think I was buying the cars, transport the person. Someone else in commercial was responsible for the training materials. Someone in IT sourced the CRM that sales rep would use when they got back into the car. And I would argue in the new model, supporting field sales is one workflow, handled by one person who removes obstacles and drives results. Once you make that shift, I think the next important question becomes, how do we measure this impact? Because procurement's always provided value. That's never been the issue. The problem is we're measuring it the same way for the last 3 decades. Cost savings, cost avoidance, policy compliance. This is the established playbook. And I think this is fine, right, for a support function. But I would argue that procurement is no longer a support function. Procurement is becoming an impact function, and impact needs a new scoreboard. If the model is still tracking how much we spent last year, I think we're implicitly telling the organization that this is the smallest possible version that procurement can be. In the AI era, I would argue that procurement needs to measure 4 things: time to value, workflow penetration, productivity lift. I said 4, that was 3. So let's unpack each. First, the top line enablement. AI tools are increasingly tied to revenue. I think this is really important to acknowledge, whether that's helping sales move faster, improving customer experience, reducing churn, or accelerating time to market. And if a tool's helping your company grow, why isn't it on your procurement dashboard? Second, I would say time to value. Forget like contracting time, forget time to go live. If you're taking 9 months to realize the value of a tool, that's not impact, right? This is a slow leak of value. I would argue that workflow penetration and productivity lift also need to be a part of this process and how you measure the new world of procurement, right? How many of your workflows are being automated? What is that doing for productivity? If a vendor saves your team 10 hours a week or removes 4 manual steps from a workflow, that is real value. And in the past, I think we've had a hard time arguing to CFOs that cost mitigation is important. And I think this new world, this matters, and the time we get back to a business will finally be acknowledged. So here's a simple example. Let's say finance implements an AI forecasting tool, and the license cost is 250%. You negotiate this down, you get 17% savings, you log it, and everyone's feeling pretty good, right? But if you look at what actually happened to the business, forecast accuracy improved by 15%. Inventory carry costs dropped by $3 million. Product availability rose by 6%, and it drove $9 million in new revenue. That is not a software deal. This is a growth engine, and procurement made this happen. I'll offer another example. If you followed the AI news recently, you've heard major organizations declare on their earnings calls that a huge portion of their code base is being written by AI. I think it's really safe to say that the price on these workflows is not going to go down. The price on these workflows is going to continue to rise year over year. So how does procurement measure value on a tool that's increasing 3 to 5% annually? But this tool is driving an entire department forward to places with speed, productivity, code shipping that we've never seen before in an organization. To that same point, and to that mindset, right, I would argue, what would procurement do if they looked across an engineering department and noticed that 10% of the organization was super spenders, spending far more in a way than the rest of the organization? I can speak for myself. What I would have done is viewed that as an anomaly. I would have probably tried to reduce their spending a little bit and trim the budget. In today's new environment, I would think about this completely differently. I would not only increase the budget of those super spenders, but I would look at how to drag kind of the rest of that engineering department more in line with how folks are spending the budget on the kind of top end of performers in that department. This is a monumental shift in thinking and requires a big change on procurement's part. I think this is where the operating model needs to go. It needs to be able to objectively report on values and goals of the organization and not just cost savings. Because I think if we keep measuring value like we have in the past, the business will just miss a large part of what procurement's delivering to the organization. And I don't think procurement wins by shrinking line items anymore. I think it wins by multiplying enterprise capability. I think it also starts with tracking these metrics we talked about. So let's just talk speed really quickly, and then we'll move to kind of wrap things up. If you have the right operating model and KPIs and your sourcing cycle is still taking 12 to 18 months, you're going to lose. And I genuinely think this model is dead. We just haven't buried the body yet. Today's best vendors, especially AI native vendors, they move really, really fast. They don't wait to deliver value. They show up, they drop in, and they deliver results 30, 60, 90 days. And if your process takes longer than this, if it takes longer than the vendor roadmap, you are already behind. So here's the fix. I'm proposing a 1-month enterprise sourcing contract. 30-day pilot, standard commercial terms, pre-approved legal language, and a clear decision at the end. We're going to scale, or we're going to shelve this and move on to the next option. This is a shift in the model that could save hundreds of hours and unlock millions of value. And it's not about cutting corners. This is about building trust faster. It's about getting to innovations faster. And it's about creating a structure that matches the pace of which the world is moving at. So I think the days of kind of asking for 60-slide decks and security questionnaires before we've seen a demo are over. I think the new model starts with a problem brief and invites the vendor to solve it, and then you move. Make KPI a speed on your own team. Velocity is now a competitive advantage, and procurement's in control of the throttle. Let me leave you with this. The operating model is clearly being redefined. And I would argue it's not about sourcing tools, it's about sourcing capabilities. It's not about chasing costs anymore. This is about chasing a strategic edge for your organization. And the org chart might not say it yet in your business, but procurement is quickly becoming one of the most cross-functional, opportunity-rich, high-leverage teams in the enterprise. So I think let's stop reporting savings and start reporting acceleration. Let's build faster paths to value. Let's retire the slow cycle and pilot the future in 30 days. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day at DPW New York. Thank you.